that almost every one of you thinks that pretty much everybody else in the world is a better public speaker than you are, which statistically you know is simply not possible. You cannot all be the worst public speaker in any given room. So what's going on in our brains? What tells us this lie? Well, according to Webster, the underlying fear behind glossophobia is judgment from or negative evaluation by others. On the flight here from Chicago, I was sitting next to a really cool guy named Eric. We're in our seats, we start to talk, he asks me what I do, and I told him, I said, I am a professional corporate spokesman and I'm an executive speaker coach. And he looks at me like I just grew a second head. Turns out that Eric had a lifelong goal, and that goal had always been to become a minister in his church. But he never did it because he was too afraid of public speaking. He didn't believe that his story was interesting enough or meaningful enough to engage a congregation. Truth, right? He didn't think he had anything special to say. Lie. And I hear that lie again and again with thousands of people that I work with and work for as I travel the world. Well, Eric gets a master's degree in engineering and aeronautics, and he spends the next 40 years doing incredible things. This guy worked on the International Space Station. He worked on the F-22 Raptor out in California. This guy was so cool. He got married. He raised a family. He moved all over the world. And then it turns out 2 years ago, at the age of 68, he had 3 kids, 8 grandkids. He decided to retire, face his fears, realize his lifelong dream. He chose finally to tell his stories. He started to believe that he had personal, meaningful value to bring to other people. And today, Eric is heading up an outreach ministry across 45 small community congregations in poor, remote villages. They run from the Arctic Circle down through eastern Russia, through the stands, and into eastern China. For 5 decades, this amazing, fascinating guy, this faithful guy, he couldn't bring himself to speak in public. He couldn't realize his lifelong dream. And all because glossophobia made him worry about judgment from or negative evaluation by others. This guy worked on the International Space Station, for crying out loud. Even that wasn't interesting enough. But today, he speaks every day, and Eric knows he has something special to say. He turned that lie into the truth. Because what Eric finally realized, what I want all of you to realize today, before 5 decades in your life go by, when it comes to public speaking, most of us are already so busy negatively judging and evaluating ourselves that we don't have the time or the energy to negatively judge or evaluate other people when they're the ones up there giving a talk, right? We're just glad it's them and not us. Quick survey. When somebody gets up to speak in front of you, do you instantly start judging them negatively? Show of hands. Put your hands up. Are you looking for them to fail? That's your first instinct as an audience member, right? You want to look for mistakes in the speaker, right? Of course not. We all come into a room like this one with optimism. We want that speaker to do well. We're on their side. Like I said, we're just so glad that they're the ones up there speaking and not us. We hope they'll have fun, that they'll bring us some value, that they will share some useful, practical information that we can benefit from. That is what you want and expect from every speaker you watch up on stage. Well, guess what? That is exactly what your audience wants and expects from you when you are the one up on that stage. They are not looking to judge you. They want to embrace you. They want to support you. Speakers and audiences are allies, not adversaries. So the next time you are asked to get up and give a public talk, whether it's for 2 people or 200 people or 2,000 people, doesn't matter. Start by trusting that your audience wants you to succeed. You're so busy worrying about judgment from or negative evaluation by others that the reality is nobody out there is judging you. Why do we know this? Because every talk, any subject, any venue, any audience, has the potential to make another person's life better. Your talk can make someone else's life better. You just need to know how to tap into that potential and bring it out for your listener. And that's what I want to help you do for the rest of our time together. And the way I'm going to start doing it is by introducing you to my grandmother, my mentor. Here she is. That's Jeanette. She is standing in front of Multer's bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona, 1962, 4 years before I was born. Here she is once again on the left at my bar mitzvah in 1979. This is grandmother. Very specific. She is not grandma, she is not granny, she is not nana, she is grandmother. This was a formidable woman, one of the biggest storytelling influences on me and in my life. Well, my grandparents lived at 70 East Ashland in Phoenix. Here's the house. I loved this house. This was my second home growing up. I was from San Diego, but I used to spend every August in Phoenix with my grandparents. Let me repeat that. August in Phoenix every summer. 116 degrees, no air conditioning. The 1970s. Every Thanksgiving, the entire family, the whole Multer family, both sides, would gather here at 70 East Ashland from all over the country, from San Diego, Los Angeles, New York, New Haven, Connecticut, everywhere. We would sit around grandmother's table, here it is, eating and talking at each other. We did not talk with each other, we talked at each other. We are Jews, we know how to talk, we are experts at it. Every person at that table had a story to tell, but not every story was a good story, which meant not every story found its audience. Not every story was personal and meaningful for the listener. Now, I was the youngest in the family, little Stevie. Most of the time, I couldn't get a word into these conversations. It was just a blur of loud voices, everybody trying to top one another for hours. So what I would do is feed the dog, Yogi, underneath the table, until I could actually slide underneath with Yogi and fall asleep down there. One day, though, I finally got old enough to start to recognize what was happening around my grandmother's table. Grandmother was seated at one end, Herman, my grandfather, was seated at the other end of the table. I started to notice who was telling good stories and who was telling not so good stories, who was listening and why, or not listening and why. Most people, it turned out, were listening to my grandmother. She was a great storyteller. The difference wasn't that one story was entertaining and the other was dull. The difference was the passion in how those stories were told. The storyteller either had passion about what they were sharing, like grandmother, or they were just talking to hear themselves talk, like some other people around the table that I won't mention. Well, that passion, that's what made the story meaningful to the listener, made it valuable, made it connective. It was a light bulb moment for little Stevie. I was probably 7 years old, maybe 8 years old at the time. All right, so now I had to figure out, well, what makes grandmother's stories so passionate? What gives them such meaning? How did she hold people's attention when other people in the family couldn't? I want to introduce you to another member of my family. This is my Aunt Stephanie. I loved my Aunt Stephanie, grandmother's daughter, my dad's sister. That's her on the left, my dad on the right. Forget about the birds. That's me sitting there in the middle. 1975, it says on the picture. Check out the teeth. Nice, right? Good shorts. Needless to say, I was very popular with the ladies at that time. All right, a year or two later, following Thanksgiving at 70 East Ashland, Aunt Stephanie is sitting next to me, and she is telling a story to my dad, who is sitting across the table. My dad gets bored with her story. About halfway through, he abandons my Aunt Stephanie, turns his head and joins grandmother's story at the end of the table. Aunt Stephanie is suddenly all alone. Her audience is gone mid-sentence. I'm telling you, the woman never missed a beat. She finished her story, the whole thing, to the side of my dad's head across the table. 2 more minutes. She never stopped talking. Nobody was paying attention, except me. Why me? Because she was so passionate. She believed in what she had to say and wanted everybody else to share that passion. She was so passionate that it didn't even matter when my dad literally abandoned her in the middle of her talk. Truth. Aunt Stephanie's story was not personal or meaningful enough to keep my father in the moment, but it was meaningful and purposeful enough to somebody else at that table. Little Stevie. That was 45 years ago. I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember her story, every word, what she was talking about. Another light bulb goes off over my head. I learned something at that table that we all need to know. It accidentally led me into my career, the one I have practiced for the last 25 years. Passion creates connection. It is not about finding the most original story, or being the most entertaining, or being the first person in the world to talk about something. It is about passion. Grandmother-level passion. And I want to help you right now start to find your own passion. When I was looking for the hook for this talk, the way that I could bring other people, like all of you, on board with the passion that I feel for public speaking and what I do, I heard a great interview with Melissa Manchester talking about how she learned to find her own meaningful, authentic stories in songwriting. Anybody old enough like me to remember Melissa Manchester? Okay, back in the early 1980s, Melissa Manchester was taking a lyric writing class in Los Angeles with Paul Simon, the great Paul Simon. She said he gave her the most important lesson she had ever learned when it came to storytelling and songwriting. He said, all of the stories have already been told. It's the way you tell your story that's the mark of authenticity. Well, I heard that and I thought, well, that's it. There's my hook. It's the way you tell your story that's the mark of authenticity. And that's what passion is all about. It is your version of your story. And that's what I want you to start bringing to your public speaking. Another light bulb moment, this time from a much older Stevie. You don't have to worry about whether or not your content is the most original or the most exciting or the funniest or the most earth-shattering story in the history of the world. You just have to be yourself. Tell your story. That is enough for the audience. And there's a good reason for that. It's because every single one of us is a natural storyteller, even the 73% of you sitting out there. Storytelling is in our DNA. Because we all come from what most of us call oral tradition. As a species, we were telling stories around grandmother's table, around the campfire, long before writing was invented, and we have continued telling stories to each other long since the written word was popularized back in the Bronze Age, about 4400 BC. Now, the academic term for oral tradition is orality. You don't hear that very often. Orality is described as the first and still most widespread mode of human communication. Multiple recent studies across 6 continents show orality is still the most dominant mode of communication today. That's despite constantly increasing rates of global literacy. It is bigger than television. Storytelling is bigger than books. It is bigger than social media. We all get most of our information from each other, from telling stories to one another. But the problem is, as soon as a story turns into an official public presentation, a professional talk on stage or on camera, we begin to worry about fear of judgment from or negative evaluation by others. The sad thing is, orality is constrained by learned glossophobia. We learn to fear and dislike public speaking, and it starts really young, from the time that we begin school. We're little. And what happens if we speak out of turn or we get the answer wrong? Negative consequences, right? We get embarrassed. We think we sound stupid. Other kids may laugh at us. What if our story isn't interesting to our teachers or to our elders? Already, orality begins to feel unappealing. It's too intimidating. And then we get a little older in school, and now the risk of speaking up increases. Well, if I'm not funny or I'm not cool, that cute girl isn't going to like me. Or maybe the school bully is going to pick on me later. On we go to high school. Now it really counts. I have to get a good grade. I have to get into a good university. And if I give a bad talk, it might bring down my grade point average, or it's going to go on my permanent academic record. We even see this in movies, right? The kid gets up to make their presentations. What do the other kids do? They laugh at him, shake their heads. He's such an idiot, right? This kind of stuff stays with us. It suppresses orality. We learn that we run more risk by talking than if we just keep our mouths shut, we keep our heads down, and we fly safely under the radar. Don't notice me. And that concept just keeps getting reinforced again through college, where everybody is smarter than we are, everybody's more well-spoken, everybody is more popular than we are. And then suddenly, guess what? We find ourselves out in the workforce, and now we avoid giving public presentations with every fiber of our being until we are forced to do it. And then we get that dreaded email from our boss, and it says, you are going to lead that session. You are the one who's going to get up and deliver that breakout at the next conference. Do me a favor, close your eyes for a minute. Let's go ahead and close your eyes. Think of a memorable story that you heard at some point in the past. Maybe it was last week or last year, maybe you were a kid, doesn't matter. Whatever pops into your head. Something that made you smile or that angered you or inspired you. Keep your eyes closed. Think of the person who told you that story. Got somebody in mind? All right, put your hand up if that person was a professional expert storyteller. Got your hand up? Good, everybody open your eyes, look around. How many hands do you see up in the air right now? Almost none, right? Okay, put your hand up if that storyteller was just a normal, average person like you or like me, right? Every one of us has the power and the potential to positively affect a fellow human being, to make someone's life better or easier or happier through our public speaking. You might make someone's job easier. You might make their company more successful. You might help them overcome a personal or a professional obstacle. That is the power that your talk has right now for your audience. You don't have to be brilliant to do it. Not every talk has to be genius or the most fascinating subject on the planet. It just needs one thing to make it successful. You, the way you tell your story. Finding passion is not always easy. Here's a list of just a few things I've talked about just in the last 12 months. Steel pots and pans, SAP network implementation support, low-friction glider patio doors, multi-cloud cross architectures, in-building public safety communications, warehouse management system picker robots, next-gen hybrid TV delivery, French CDC-approved face masks. Sometimes finding your passion in your topic, it takes a little bit of effort. Well, let's look at your topic. Maybe your talk is so technical, so full of data and detail, that you don't really see any place for personal passion in it or human meaning beyond the product itself. Imagine you are talking about something you don't really care about. Or better yet, what if your talk for your company is about a product you don't even believe in? One you know doesn't even work very well or isn't very special. I don't want you to imagine it. I want to show you exactly what it looks like. This is me back in 1998, about 50 pounds skinnier than I am today. I was speaking for Philips Electronics at a huge show called Comdex. Some of you might remember Comdex. It was about a product called Free Speech 2000. This was a voice recognition software product, which was still a very new concept for consumers back in 1998. Well, Philips wanted a piece of that business. So they very quickly built up this voice recognition software, and it didn't work. It was still a couple of generations at least away from being a successful product. But Philips thought if we don't launch this thing now, our window of opportunity is going to close. So we went to this big show, 200,000 people, other shows. We would run 2 live demos every hour for about 300 people every time. This software failed on me every single time live in front of a room full of strangers. Where do you find passion about something like this? So here's how it would work. I would actually dictate. I had a little comlink thing, very Star Trek-y. I wanted to prove that this demo was happening in real time. And I would say, OK, start recording. I'm here in Las Vegas with my friends. Pause record. And then I would go to the audience. OK, yell out some names so I can prove it's live. All right, Diane, Marty, and Narendra. OK, start recording. I'm here in Las Vegas with my friends Diane, Marty, and Narendra. And then up on this huge screen behind me, it would type out, I'm here in Las Vegas with my friends Dying, Party, and Nintendo. It never worked. 300 people would fall apart in front of me. Nobody was going to buy this software, okay? Swear words were my favorite. They were great. I would say, last night for dinner I had, pause record. What did I have? Pizza and sea bass. Okay, last night for dinner I had pizza and sea bass. And it would say, last night for dinner I had penis and sweet ass. It was great. People loved this. They were howling with laughter. But here's the point of this. We were having so much fun together, the audience and I. I found my passion in the potential that this product had to eventually make people's professional and personal lives better. But I looked forward to giving this presentation. I wanted to see what was going to pop up next on that big screen. I loved this. We did this at other shows as well, and they always failed. They always went wrong. And what's fascinating is 22 years later, people still remember these presentations if they're my age. About once a year to this day, somebody will come up to me after a talk and they'll be like, I remember you. You were that Philips guy with the... Meaningful, personal, connected stories can be about anything. They can come from anywhere. They can come from anyone, including you 73%. Your story has the power to positively impact someone's life. The best storytellers have one thing in common. They share their passion, not their product. And this is how the world's most successful brands approach their storytelling, with the why. Simon Sinek talked about. Look at Apple, Nike, Starbucks, Sony, Coke, Netflix, Disney, on and on. These companies are so great at capturing our imaginations first and our wallets second. They share a vision of a better, more passionate world, and then they invite us to join them in that world. To do that, they talk to our heart and not to our head. And the reason is, turns out our head is a really lousy place to create connection from. The head is where most companies speak from and direct their marketing efforts toward. The head is where most talks tend to live. And unfortunately, it's also where most talks tend to die. It's why so many talks leave us feeling cold and uninspired, and we don't remember them, because these companies, these speakers, tell their story from a me first, you second perspective. I want to tell you about me. Here's my company. Here's my product. You've heard this talk a million times. Sounds like this. I have 20 minutes to tell you everything about myself, my company, our great new product, what that product does, how it solves the problem, how we built that product. I'm going to show you a demo. I'm going to point you to our website, and I hope you buy it. Be honest. Has that type of a talk ever worked on you? Have you yourself ever given that kind of a talk for an audience? People don't buy what we do. They buy why we do it. They buy our passion. We need to find the why. All right, so let's say that your talk is explaining last quarter's growth numbers for your company. Not exactly the sexiest topic in the world. How do you feel about that growth? Are you proud to be a part of it? Does that growth mean that your team's hard work paid off? Are you excited for your company or for your customer because everybody shares in the rewards that last quarter's growth delivered? Well, guess what? There's your passion. Talk about that. Talk about those benefits, because those affect your audience. Instead of doing a deep dive into the technical aspects of conference calls, maybe what you do is you share the positive feedback you've gotten from partners and customers about your mobile response team. Are you proud of that feedback? Did you have a role in helping to make it happen? There is so much there to be passionate about. If you can share those parts of your story, not what your product does, not the statistics, what it meant for your audience, for your market. Share that, and you'll make us want to share and achieve that same passion for ourselves and our companies. All right, earlier, I asked you to send me that photo that you took. This is what you should have gotten back as a gift. It's a quick, accessible, easy application guide, a gift for every one of you to quickly and easily begin becoming a better public speaker using 5 paths to passionate storytelling. These 5 paths are ones that you can very easily walk and that will instantly make you into a better speaker today and help you give stronger talks. The paths are accept, trust, recognize, share, and deliver. Path number 1, accept your storytelling heritage. Like I said, whether or not you enjoy it, speaking is already in your DNA. And the reason most presentations do not reveal that truth is that the speaker is so busy delivering a boring data dump about their organization that they don't put themselves or their passion for their work into their narrative. Humans relate to other humans. We don't relate to statistics or brands. I'm going to get scientific on you for just a moment. Every talk that you give activates a segment in the audience's brains called Wernicke's area. We all have it. It's a little segment in the frontal lobe of the dominant hemisphere. Wernicke's area, this is our main processing system. I am speaking to you, you are listening to me. This area, Wernicke's, hears blah, 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 and it hears my text, and hears my numbers, and it decodes everything, and then once you're done decoding, done, you're it, that's it. You process, it's over. My job when I'm giving a talk is I need to create the next step for that information. I need to move that processed data out of Wernicke's area, what we call the lizard brain, and into your full processing spectrum in the prefrontal and frontal cortex, because this is where your creativity and your executive function take place. Now, the way I do that is by connecting the data and the details to a good story. Jeremy Sue wrote an amazing piece last year on the insula. It's another interesting part of the brain, another wedge deep in the cerebral cortex. This is what controls emotion and empathy. We can activate this part of the brain in our audience with our talk by personalizing our content. So it gets us out of our own head, minimizes that corporate speak, and brings out the why in our audience. Our insulas are out here listening for cause and effect relationships between what I tell you and things that you yourselves have previously experienced. Yuri Hassan runs the Hassan Lab at Princeton, and they study something called experience-based chemical synchronization, which is just a fancy way of saying that we can get other people to experience something that we ourselves have experienced. The person telling that story, me, and the brains of the people listening to that story, you, my audience, we synchronize around shared narratives and similar human experiences. So for example, we all buy groceries. We all work. We all look for love. We eat, we sleep, we walk, we read, we watch TV, we do other fun things I'm not going to go into detail on right now. But our stories have got commonality long before we have even met one another. And that commonality creates pre-existing connection between you and your audience. Just tell us a story we can relate to, whether it's about your product or your service or your brand. If you can tell a story that we understand and that we recognize, you instantly synchronize experiences. And that is what is so cool about orality. We all have that natural storytelling heritage inside us. We just have to accept it, push past that glossophobia, and share what it is that you are passionate about, because that's all your audience cares about, whether they're family or strangers. Path number 2 is trust. Trust that your audience wants you to succeed. Accepting your storytelling heritage becomes so much easier when you go into your talk already knowing that your audience wants to hear the story that you have to tell. Best way to do that? You build every talk from your audience's perspective and not from your perspective or your company's. Dale Carnegie said, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. Talk about them. Do that and you will win. You will earn the audience's trust. You will keep their trust. They will follow you anywhere. Peter Block is an expert on empowerment in leadership, and he studies trust and agreement in communication. And what he says is lack of trust is really fear of disagreement. We mistakenly think that people who disagree with us don't trust us. And that makes us never want to get up in front of an audience to speak. What if they disagree with me? What if they think they know more than I know? Fear of judgment from or negative evaluation by others. You may not always have the power to choose when you speak or what topic you're going to speak about, but you always have total power over how you choose to trust or not trust your audience. If you walk out on that stage with your listeners top of mind, focused on them, on their success, you will initiate a positive response. But if you hit that stage in fear of your audience, and if you're just focused on yourself and what's most important to you and not to them, you will initiate a negative response in your audience. The choice is yours. It's up to you. Psych yourself up before you get out there. Tell yourself, my talk is going to go great. Lie to yourself if you have to. That's fine. You can fake it till you make it. But if you give them what they need, they will reward you for it. That two-way trust makes you a better speaker and your audience better listeners. Trust them. Path number 3, recognize. Recognize that you were asked to speak for a reason. Think about it. All the possible speakers on your team or in your company, guess what? You were the one who was asked to give this talk. Why? Well, if you don't know, we're not going to know. Your boss could have chosen anybody to carry this message out to your customers or the media. Go find out what the reason is that you're up there, then use it in your talk. When you are speaking for your organization, you represent every person under that company banner, and you want to honor that. You want to treat your moment on stage or on camera with the respect and the careful preparation that that moment deserves. Take pride and ownership in this opportunity. Have fun. Don't just go out there and do your job. Be a leader on that microphone. Now let's talk about leadership. Dave Stacoviak hosts the Coaching for Leaders blog. He says leaders are not naturally charismatic people. Leadership creates charisma. Most of us have that backward. We avoid speaking, taking a leadership role, because we don't think we have enough charisma to be taken seriously. We don't belong up there. Wrong. It's because we get up to give that talk, we take on that leadership role, that we create our own charisma. When you value your time as a speaker instead of fearing it, you end up leading by example. When that camera starts to roll, or you step on stage to that microphone, own your platform. If you make a mistake, who cares? Move on. You're the only one who knows what's in your script. You are up there because you belong up there. You have information that everyone needs. Whoever chose you to give that talk, they were not thinking about how funny you are, or how cool, or how much money you make, or what your job title is. They chose you because they wanted you to represent them. Recognize that you were asked to speak for a reason. Path number 4, share. Share the passion in why you do what you do. As I said before, you're going to have to include a certain amount of detail and technical information in your talk, and that's great. We all have to do that. The trick is to bring those details and those technologies to life in a way that makes sense and brings your concept alive to create a vision for your audience. And that's where your passion comes from. Passion comes from getting yourself into that shared narrative with your audience. I'll give you a goofy example. You've probably heard this story before. This is John Montagu up here, the 4th Earl of Sandwich. This guy liked to do 2 things. He liked to gamble, and he liked to eat. And judging by this picture, not necessarily in that order. All right, so Montagu, he would hold his cards in one hand, and he would hold some sort of a meat snack in the other hand, and the grease from the meat would drip all over the cards. So one day in 1762, Montagu asked his cook to put that meat between 2 slices of toast to help contain the grease. Well, suddenly, everybody in Europe wanted their food served in the style of sandwich. It's a great story, right? It's a lie, it's actually not true, but it's accessible, it's fun. It paints a picture that we can recognize and relate to. We can find some passion in telling a fun story like that. Let's say I skip the fun part of the story, and now I'm going to explain the sandwich to you, the invention of the sandwich, using typical PowerPoint slides, all right? So here we go. First of all, we're going to begin with a sandwich structure viability analysis, which you can see here. I'm going to show you how we can measure the physical soundness of carbohydrate-protein compound conformance using quantitative platform methodologies here for grease and absorption ratios. You can check this out, and if you want to know more, check out the website. This is very interesting as well. Now we can track the trajectory specifics of how grease actually drips from meat onto a card table at multiple velocities and multiple runoff language. This is fascinating. There's lots to learn here. I hope you remember all of this. And then, of course, it's really important that we break down the statistical dissemination of the sandwich as it started to spread first across Europe and then around the world from the 1760s, along with associated trade impacts and colonial political cost-benefit comparisons. You can check those out by now. You have all lost your appetite. You could not give a damn less about the sandwich. I've killed the whole sandwich concept. I know this is silly, but you get the point. The story is what creates interest and action from your audience, not data, not details, not statistics. It's so much easier to share passion for your product or service when you can bring it to life through an example, or a customer use case, or a personal success story that then creates a shared experience between you and your audience. How does your topic help others? How is what you're talking about making others' life better? How will it inspire your audience to take action on your talk and your topic. Share the passion in why you do what you do, and your audience will recognize and want to share in that passion themselves. Which leads us to our fifth and final path, deliver. Deliver as yourself. You know what the worst thing is you can say to an insecure person? Just be yourself. I don't want to be myself. Myself sucks. Myself is flawed. Myself gets nervous. Myself worries that I'll mess up and I'll look stupid in front of people. Getting comfortable with public speaking, getting rid of the glossophobia means learning to just accept what we are good at, but also accept what you are not so good at. You don't have to be perfect. We all work with what we've got and what comes naturally to us. And that's fine. It's actually better than fine. Our audiences love it because it's honest. It's real. Your audience will recognize and respect that. They don't want to hear from your company. They want to hear from you, a fellow human being, somebody who is recognizable to them, who's accessible, who looks and sounds like them, who shares the same challenges, the same insecurities that we all do. Just be yourself. Yourself is already perfect, I promise you. Part of the problem, one of the biggest reasons that 73% of you used to not like public speaking, you see what I did there? It's because of your scripts. Scripts get in the way. Scripts do not make your talk better. They hinder you. Memorizing a script makes you stiff and uptight because now you're worried about the words and not the humanity. Scripts kill passion. And because most talks are written in someone else's words, the company's words, the corporate words, the legal approved words, even if you do write your own script, you're probably copying and pasting verbiage somebody else created, and you're memorizing those company words, hoping they will sound natural coming out of your mouth. And you know what? It doesn't work. Delivering as yourself means speaking in your own voice, your own words. So scripts are good for two things. Number one, getting ideas out of your head, and then number two, putting those ideas in logical storytelling order. Once you've done that, though, you know what you want to say, you know how you want to say it, take that script, put it away. Instead, you want to give yourself small cue points, either on paper, in your confidence monitor, wherever. Cue points, a couple of words, 3 words that help you stay on track. Where am I? Good, got it. It frees you up. You can see that cue point and then speak about what you know from the heart instead of always speaking from your script. Tell your story in your own words. You already know what to say. It's your job. You talk about your job every day. You don't need a script to do it. Why change that just because you're suddenly on stage or on camera? We want to hear from you, not your company. Use your words, not theirs. Deliver as yourself. 5 paths to passionate storytelling. Accept your storytelling heritage. Trust that your audience wants you to succeed. Recognize that you were asked to speak for a reason. Share the passion behind why you do what you do, and deliver as yourself. Pick one path. Pick 2, pick all 5. Totally up to you. It's in your hands now. But you already have everything you need right now to begin making your public presentations stronger and more interesting for your listener, and more personal and more meaningful and more passionate. You're all on your way to becoming honorable Aunt Stephanie's, right? So like I said, we're going to start and end with a truth and a lie, only now we have turned that into 2 truths. Truth, the best storytelling is personal and meaningful to the listener. Truth, you are already a good public speaker. You already have plenty of special things to say. Because even if all the stories have already been told, it's the way you tell your story that brings out the passion in us. Thank you all so much.